Hello, welcome to the Roundhouse podcast with Paul Solentrop of Wichita State University Strategic Communications. Our guest is Steve Rainbolt. Steve is the director of track and field at Wichita State. On Sunday, the Shockers won their second consecutive American Athletic Conference men's outdoor title, outscored the Houston Cougars by 2 points in Tampa, Florida. This is the eighth men's outdoor title for Wichita State under Steve Rainbolt. He took over at Wichita State in 2000, and it is the 35th of his tenure if you count up all the men's, women's, and cross-country titles. Steve, you've been pretty outspoken. This one was special. Tell us about that. What made this one such a landmark event?
Oh, I could easily take the rest of the podcast, Paul, talking about that because that's kind of how I am. You teased me about that yesterday, but that is an open-ended question that I could expound on truly forever. But here's a couple of things, a little preface. We won the conference championship a year ago with 185 points. 25 of those points were in the javelin event. We graduated all 5 of the throwers that scored those 25 points. So now we're sitting with 0 returning points in the javelin event. We did recruit a good javelin thrower, and we had some decathlon guys that threw the javelin, and we did end up scoring 9 points in the javelin, if I'm not mistaken, something like 9 points in the javelin event. But throughout the year, I've been thinking, well, how are we going to overcome this 25-point kick in the gut of graduating, 5 guys in the javelin event? So that was one thing. I am sorry to say that caused me doubt. It caused me, concern or whatever you want to say. Kind of like guys were coming up to me all year long, going, "Coach, we're going to repeat. We're going to do it. We've got a nice team returning." And I'm in the back of my mind, every one of those interactions, I'm thinking, "Yeah, have you guys realized that we lost all of our javelin throwers? That." You know what I mean? If you realize that, and I never said it to one of the athletes. I wasn't going to talk that way to those guys, but they were believing strongly all year. So that's a preface that really and truly going into the meet, it felt like we're not as powerful as we were a year ago. And if Houston is their typical dominant self, then this is going to be very tough. So then we go to the meet. Well, the pre-meet projection is a 70-point difference. Now, we had dealt with 60 and 65-point difference or deficits on the pre-meet projection. And you understand when I say pre-meet projection, that's simply a guess or a projection based on the season-long performance list. And so it's not cast in stone, obviously. It didn't play out that way. But it's sometimes remarkably, prophetic. Is that the right word? You can almost bank on it going plus or minus that way oftentimes. So there was that. 70 points felt like a lot to overcome. We go through the meet. We're doing well. We're having a nice meet. Then, starting day 3, we have a team meeting, and we're 38 points down still on the projection. We have 38 points to overcome, and didn't have a lot of firepower in some area. We didn't have finalists in some events. So I just thought, 38 points, I hope we can battle Cincinnati for second. It was how I was feeling the morning of the finals. And they were out there, 15 points ahead of us. So I was wondering, can we overtake Cincinnati for second? And so with about 2 or 2.5 hours remaining in this track meet, Coach Wise, who is the consummate statistician and keeps a close eye on these details throughout the meet, event by event, is calling me and texting me and going, "Hey, dude, we got a chance to win this. We could possibly win this thing." And I'm down there coaching the high jump, and I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" He said, "Hey, man, the triple jump is going our way. And if Kirk Hunter is right," Kirk Hunter, our distance coach, "if he's right about the distance, about the 5K, that we can score some points there. We're down for 0. We've got ourselves projected for 0 in the 5K. If we can score some points there, all of a sudden this thing's going to come down to the 4x4. So as the 5K unfolds and our guys are up in the scoring, I'm getting choked up, man. I can't even believe that this thing has turned around a 70-point, underdog change. And it's just overwhelming, and the guys are battling like crazy. You could see it in their eyes that they intended to get up into that scoring. And they ended up scoring 10 points in the 5K versus a projection of 0. That's remarkable. So now it comes down to the 4x4, and our guys run beautifully, and we get third, and we win the meet. It felt stunning is the answer to you. This is the end of the long answer to your question. It felt stunning. It felt unreal. I'm not using that word unreal like people use, oh, that's unreal. No, this felt unreal, not real. This felt like, am I imagining this? Did we actually win this track meet? This is why it felt some kind of way different. Many of those championships that we've won, we went into the meet expecting to win. We went into the meet with a positive on the pre-meet projection. Well, now you're the team with the target on your back. Now you're the team that better win, or we didn't, fulfill the pre-meet projection. And so this one just felt dramatically different that way, Now, a year ago felt that way kind of too, but somehow a year ago, and I can tell you the reason, somehow a year ago we saw it coming. We literally talked about it in the concourse at the indoor championship. I said to the guys, hey guys, we just finished closer to Houston. We got second place in the indoor championship last year. We were closer to Houston than we'd ever been at an indoor championship. And I said, guys, we've got good javelin throwers. We've got good discus throwers. We've got good 400 hurdlers. We've got a really nice outdoor team. Those guys better be ready for us at the outdoor championship. So we were talking about that one the whole spring. And with confidence, you know what I mean? We saw it coming, the possibility of it. Even though there was still a pretty big deficit, we knew that the way that this goes sometimes. But this one didn't necessarily feel like that. It was harder to visualize a path to the championship. I guess that's part of the reason that it has felt really and truly stunning and sort of startling that we pulled it off.
And part of that is the competition. Let's give people a little perspective on Houston. That's, I guess, a national level, elite level track program, especially in sprints and jumps. They had won, before last year, they had won 5 straight American Athletic Conference titles, 6 of the 7 since the conference has existed. So that's a big part of this, too. You were beating a really, really fine track program.
Yeah, no question. Carl Lewis is the head coach, and they have an elite sprint group. And so, yes, I consider Houston a premier program. I went and shook his hand and said, Carl, you all have been an unbelievable opponent. It's been wonderful to be in this conference because they're leaving. It's been wonderful to be in this conference with you guys, and I'm going to miss you. And he said, I'm going to miss this conference. This has been fun. He's a terrific guy. And that was a wonderful interaction with, a guy who belongs in the conversation as world's greatest athlete in the history of the world, 9-time Olympic gold medalist. And so anyway, for people that might not be aware of Carl Lewis, which by the way is an unbelievable phenomenon, that there are athletes in the team that look at you with a blank stare when you use the name Carl Lewis. And you're going, what? You don't know that name? But that's the fact. It goes that way. So anyway, yes, you are correct about that. Now, a little bit of perspective on that, which is still a little bit of an answer to your original question. I'm so proud of this team. And here's another detail. They win 6 individual titles in that competition. There are 21 events in track and field. They win 6.
Houston
did. Houston wins 6. of the individual titles, almost a third of the individual titles. We win 0 individual titles. That's unbelievable. That's never happened before for our team to win 0 individual titles and win the championship. I don't think it's ever happened that we've won 0 individual titles, even when we got second or third or fourth or fifth. It's just kind of unheard of. It really points out the team aspect of our championship, of winning that championship. It was a team effort. Quite a number of second place finishes, and every other position in the scoring, 2nd through 8th, except 1st. And so, look, would I love to have some champions in there? Absolutely. I wish we had some champions. But having not had any, I find it kind of cool. I think, man, we won a team title with 0 individual champions. That's kind of cool, I think, because we're about balance and depth at Wichita State. Balance, having good athletes in all the event areas. Depth, having multiple good athletes in all the event areas. And coming at you, event after event after event after event. So yes, that was a cool part of this, that it was a total team effort.
So there are other ways to coach track and field, or other ways to build a program where you're really going after, elite athletes, that kind of stuff. Where did this come from? How did you develop this affection and this philosophy of, I'm all about these conference championships, the team aspect of it, and the balance and the depth? Where's that come from?
So that's a great question, man. I'm so glad you're asking that question. As you're saying that, I'm able, in response to that question, to give a shout out to my college coach, Bob Timmons, who was Jim Ryan's coach right over here a mile away at Wichita East High School. And then at KU, I was on the team at KU with Timmy, and it was about team track and field. It was about balance and depth, and I believe in that. And I also think about a good old-fashioned high school league meet where, at the high school level or at the college level, but certainly I began thinking this way at the high school and college, high school track when I was a high school kid, going to the league meet and wanting to win a team title with all your buddies and the throwers and the distance runners and the jumpers and the sprinters and the hurdlers and the pole vaulters. And it's just never occurred to me to be any other way. If I'm an AD and I got a swimming and diving program, and my swimming and diving program wins the conference championship, but I noticed they didn't have any divers, but they had great swimmers, I'd go and I'd congratulate that coach, and I'd go, man, great job. I got to ask you, tell me about the diving situation. Why do you not have any divers on the team? I just am that way. I want to have athletes in all the event areas. I think there's a rhythm and a balance to it. I don't know how else to explain it, but it seems so logical to me. Why would you leave an event area unattended? That's how I feel about it.
So Wichita State joined the American Athletic Conference in 2017, which would have been 2018 then for track. What have you learned about building a program in the American versus your years in the Missouri Valley Conference?
Well, there have been some differences. Here I am talking about team track and field, and here I am explaining how you don't leave an event area unattended. And yet, for the first time in my life, and I'm an older guy, and as an athlete and as an assistant coach, and then as a head coach here, and this is my second head coaching position, I've never been open to considering leaving an event area unattended. And we haven't left an event area unattended, but we did realize when we went into this league, hey, the sprints are so tough. A case could be made that during our time here, there have been years when this league was the toughest sprint conference in America, solely because of Houston, just a Houston by themselves. I mean, one year during this time, they set the all-time collegiate record in the 4x100 meter relay. They had the collegiate record holder in like the 200. They've had sprint groups that were arguably the best ever in the history of collegiate track. Well, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to compete? If a guy can't run fast enough to score points, then what's the use? Guess what? A year ago in that championship, we scored in most all of those events. But it's very difficult. So we have, over this time, de-emphasized it a bit, meaning that we would only take them or only recruit them if they were good enough to score in those events. So we've had less of those terrific sprinters. Now we've got guys that can run in this league, and it's been good. Well, anyway, point being, we learned that was a strategy. Let's not worry about trying to, have a whole bunch of sprinters. Let's only take them if they're good enough. Let's capitalize on the areas that appear vulnerable. The javelin event has been vulnerable, and the decathlon has been vulnerable, and we've capitalized on that. And then the jumps are sometimes vulnerable, sometimes not. Sometimes between Houston and Cincinnati and us and Memphis and others, the jumps all of a sudden are super tough, like the long jump or the triple jump or the high jump. And then other times it's possible to pick up some points in one of those events with a jump that is a little more average. It was that way this year in the high jump. We've got 2 first-team All-Americans, including the national champion in our conference. Kid from South Florida is the NCAA indoor champion, and our guy, Brady Paulin, is first-team All-American at the indoor championship. And yet 8th place isn't very high jump. It's not that, it's vulnerable. You can put a reasonably decent high jumper out there, and he can have a good chance to score in the competition. And so we're looking for those vulnerable spots like crazy. I suppose that's the short answer to your question. We're looking for vulnerable places to score points in this league.
So you have 34 spots on the conference team, the 34 people that will compete. So I'm sure there had to be decisions that were tough when you get down to certain event groups. Give us a decision or two that you debated, that you look back on, boy, that was a tough one, but we made a good call there. Anybody stand out in that area?
First of all, we win by 2 points. So every scoring finish meant the world to us. I mean, that's another thing that I love. Every scoring finish made a difference. And so every guy on the team, unlike times when, our last year in the Valley here on the women's side, we scored something like 227 points, set an all-time Missouri Valley Conference scoring record. Second was probably 120 or 130. We doubled the score on the second place team. There were athletes that we could have won without. We could have won the meet without. Couldn't have won this meet without any of them. We had needed every single one of them. A big one was Cesar Romero, who got 8th in the steeplechase event and was a guy that we were debating whether or not to take him or some other guys. He was a guy that was on the bubble, so to speak, in the days and weeks leading up to when we had to make our entries. And Coach Hunter was promoting that, the steeplechase event, like I was talking about a minute ago, seems to be one of those events that appears a bit vulnerable. It might not be. There's 7 good guys, but that 8th position, I could see Cesar, if he runs well, even though he's inexperienced, he'd run 1 steeplechase race. Cesar was not running. He's young. He's a young guy on our team, and he's not quite at the American Athletic Conference level yet, like in the 5,000 or something like that. But he said, Coach, I want to help the team. Can I try the steeplechase? Let's try it. And he runs a time that's not good enough to typically score, but it was not that far off. And so we picked him on the chance that maybe he could battle up in there for that 8th place finish. He did. He got that 8th place finish. Guess who was 9th? A kid from Houston. Well, what if Caesar's not there? Then a Houston kid scores. Houston scores 1 more point than they did. Wichita State kid's not there if we don't take him. We score 1 less point. That's a 2-point swing, and we're tied with Houston instead of winning by 2 points. So So Caesar won the meet for us, so to speak, along with every other guy on the team. But you understand what I'm saying? That's a cool deal. That means the world to a young guy, first of all, Caesar and every other guy on the team that made a contribution like that. And it means the world to us coaches, the staff, because it came together the way we envisioned. It came together the way we, I want to say dreamed of. And that's awesome when that happens, I think.
Euban, and I'm going to ask your help with his last name.
Gonsalves.
Gonsalves scored 22 points. Tell us about his contribution to the meet.
Just incredible. Just incredible. Unless somebody listening has a track and field background, or at the very least, a pretty significant athletic background, they might not be aware that they watch a lot of athletes on TV and at athletic events who look unbelievable, like Euban does, but they don't realize that some of these athletes are in the training room a lot. They're dealing with aches and pains all the time, and Euban is one of those guys. He goes along and he's an explosive, dynamic, athletic guy, and so he puts a lot of pressure and strain on his body parts, on the connective tissues, the tendons, the ligaments, the bones, the musculoskeletal system is under strain and stress on Euban Gonsalves. And so the triple jump event is unbelievably demanding on the human body. And so he doesn't do it that often because he's banged up. Long jump is similar. It's an all-out high-intensity sprint through the takeoff and a jump that's demanding on, like I say, the bones and connective tissues and all that. So he doesn't do that often. It was something of a secret weapon, for one thing, because there was that 70-point deficit that I mentioned at the outset, but it didn't include any points for Euban in the long jump or triple jump. Well, he ends up getting second in both those events. That's 16 points. So that knocks that 70-point deficit down some. And he probably beat a Houston guy or two that got knocked down, so that cost them some more points. So it's probably more of a 20-point swing or something like that. So the jumping in to an event that he doesn't compete in that often and doing so well because he's talented and he is good at it and he's a ferocious competitor. Man, this is a competitive guy. It's immeasurable how much it helps the team. And then his 400 hurdles, which is sort of his bread and butter event, are awesome. Man, that's an awesome event. And he ran beautifully, ran a personal record, and led our group of three guys into a big scoring event, the 400-meter hurdles. So Euban was a massive contributor and truly led our team to the championship.
So it's been a really, really strong year for the distance group on the men's team. They finished second in cross country and really contributed to this outdoor title. Why has that group been so prominent this school year?
Well, Adrian is, arguably one of, it's probably appropriate for this conversation for me to say one of, but I want to say the finest junior college distance runner in history. He ran the fastest 3,000 in history of junior college running, 8:01 indoors. He was multiple-time national champion in junior college level. He's certainly one of the greatest junior college distance runners in history. It was a huge signing for us, and he is a team guy. He'd never run 10Ks. That's not one of his events, but he said, I want to run the 10K. I think I can score. Well, he runs up in there to second. It's unbelievable, the contribution. And then to come back from a 10K on Thursday, or rather on Friday, and face a 5K on Sunday in the heat of Tampa, Florida, it was hot, man, is very courageous, very courageous. And he was like, I'm going to get up in the scoring. I'm going to get up in there. And sure enough, he battled, and you could see how tired he was, but you could also see how determined he was every time that he came around. And you're watching the race and you're screaming for him. I'm feeling bad screaming for him. I'm feeling guilty. I'm thinking, yeah, you're screaming for him to go. You get out there and go, Rainbolt. You know what I mean? This is not easy. People don't understand how brutal distance running is. It is tough. It is unbelievably tough. And he did it so unbelievably well. Well, but there's also Clayton Dukacek, and there's Ben Flowers, and it goes on. I mentioned Caesar earlier, and I'm going to forget some guys. This was an unbelievable group effort, and we outperformed our form chart so dramatically. It was unbelievable, and I couldn't say enough. Now, the first thought that came to my mind when you asked a second ago, tell me about this, the first thought that came to my mind was Kirk Hunter. Coach Hunter is remarkable. He does a remarkable job of having a group of athletes ready to run in, championship meet competition. He just does an unbelievable job. I could sit here, we could do a podcast. We should come back and do a podcast just about that, because it's simply unbelievable how he finds a way to artistically, there's the science of coaching, and that's writing up training programs that are based on exercise science. And then there's the art of coaching, and that's manipulating things individually because of what you know about that young guy or that young girl, and you can help them, artistically bring them to a championship form at the right time, okay? And he does it as well as anybody I've ever been around as a distance coach. Truly remarkable, and I appreciate it a lot and admire watching him do it.
So Saturday night there was a rain lightning delay. I'm told when you talk to the team, you said there are going to be people who come back, other schools who come back, and they're not really ready to go. How do you get a team ready to go in those kind of odd circumstances, keep them focused and keep them on task?
Well, I don't know that I have a great answer to that question. I do feel like that my remarks to the team at that moment were good or helpful or whatever. I saw athletes nodding in agreement with me, and that, but it was pretty simple. I just said, hey, the toughest people are going to come back from this delay and are going to compete hard. The toughest athletes are going to come back and are going to get it done. The toughest athletes are going to remain focused during this lightning delay, whether this lightning delay is until 9 o'clock tonight or until tomorrow morning. We'll see what happens, but the toughest athletes will remain focused throughout it, and then will get themselves ready to compete, and will go out and compete. I don't care if it happens in the middle of the night. And so let's, shockers, be the toughest athletes. Let's be the toughest athletes. And guys are going like this, and so I'm knowing that I'm connecting with them mentally and emotionally and all of that. There was an energy that I thought was good. Now, that's the end of the answer. In other words, you're dealing with a bunch of young individuals. Some of them are going to handle that well, and some of them aren't. But I do think that talking about toughness mattered. You know what I mean? Are you tough enough to handle this? Are you going to win this contest, or is this contest going to win you? Is my feeling all the time. This is a situation. Are you going to win the situation, or is the situation going to defeat you? That's the question. And anytime I ask an athlete that, because I ask that question a lot, they always say, I'm going to win. I'm going to win this situation, So they did, man. We had to compete that night from 9 to midnight in rainy conditions. In other words, the lightning was gone, but there was still some drizzle and some rain and some sogginess and some slipperiness and all that. And, man, they showed up and battled. And so anyhow, I don't know if that's my answer. I don't know that we did anything magical, but we did talk about let's be as tough as we can be and show up here when they call these events back, this meet schedule back and let's be ready to compete. And the guys and we're talking about the guys right now. Our women had a good meet too, but the guys did a great job of that. Perfect? No. That's another thing about this meet. This was not a perfect meet. We had areas where I know some guys left the meet disappointed that they didn't get up in a final or whatever. A year ago, it was like magic. We hit on all cylinders, it seemed like. You know what I mean? So, no, it wasn't perfect, but boy, the guys showed up and competed tough that night, and I was really proud of them.
So last question is we got to get you out of here for some other obligations. Nate Van finished second in the decathlon. Shockers grabbed 3 of the top 4 spots, 5 of the top 8 to score 22 points. How important was the contribution of the decathlon group?
So, I'm an old decathlon man, and so I don't know, you naturally, Kirk Hunter's an old distance runner, you know what I mean? And so you naturally sort of gravitate as a coach to what you're familiar with and what you're good at and what you love. And I love the decathlon. I love the multi-events. And so we're a decathlon school, and we've had good decathlon athletes. And our guys pulled together beautifully and did what I want to say they did what we do. But guess what? We don't always do it. It doesn't always play out 22 points and 5 scorers, but it did this year. Our guys finished. It's tough to finish a decathlon in that heat down there. It's tough to stay focused and go through 10 events, 2 days of competition. And Nate Van did it unbelievable. I want to tell you, it was a special couple of days for Nate Van because he was hurt last year. He was done. He was prepared he asked me if he could go ahead and redshirt because he was injured and he knew he wasn't going to be ready. And he wanted to come back and give it a go for one final go-round. Well, that's a 1-year commitment out of his life. And he committed to being the best he could be. He went down there, and something that doesn't happen very often in decathlon competition is do better than your projection in the 100 meters, then do better than your projection in the long jump, and then better than your projection in the shot put. Event by event by event. He did better than his projection in every single event. It was unbelievable. Except the 1500. But he ran hard in the 1500, and it was enough to keep him on track for a great big personal record decathlon event. And so I couldn't be prouder of Nathan Van. Couldn't be prouder. It was unbelievable. And his mates, Audrey Navajone was dinged up and not himself because he's suffered through a little bit. He won the indoor championship in the heptathlon, and then he had a procedure done to try to relieve some pressure on his groin, and he had to sit out for about 6 weeks. And getting back in shape and ready, that in short order, it was difficult, and he wasn't quite ready. And it was very disappointing for him because he's a wonderful athlete, and he had won 3. He'd won the decathlon championship and 2 indoor championships leading up to this, and he wanted to keep winning these multi-event titles. But he kept battling and competed hard all the way to the finish. And we go 2, 3, 4, and that was huge. Every point counted. And so I was really, really proud of the decathlon guys.
So he finished third with 7,064 points. Nathan Van, that we mentioned, finished second, 7,332. The other names finished for the Shockers: Hudson Bailey in 4th, Luke Porter in 7th, and Colby Castor in 8th. Steve, thanks very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for talking with me about our championship. It was wonderful, and it means a lot. So thank you.
Hi, this is Rick Miuma, president of Wichita State University. Check out the latest episode of the Forward Together podcast. Each episode, I sit down with different guests from Shocker Nation to celebrate the vision and mission of Wichita State University. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening to the Roundhouse podcast, courtesy of Wichita State University Strategic Communications. We encourage you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find more Roundhouse content at GoShockers.com.
Bradshaw into Wingate. Wingate's going to dribble it a couple of times and throws it in the hands of Kuznard. Drew it away. Kuznard to Ryan Martin for the dunk. The Shockers are going to the Sweet 16. It's all over. over. The Shockers up 7. 3 seconds. 2. Jumper by Smith is no good. Wichita State to the Sweet 16.